I teach to sell at premium rates and sell at the top of the market. And that's very much what I did. I actually turn around to say, I'm sorry, that doesn't actually work. I actually respond to them. I'm like, sorry, working for free doesn't align with my values, because it definitely doesn't. I see a lot of VAs when they first start saying, oh, I'm offering my prices really low to get testimonials or to even get clients. And I very much try and get them to change the narrative on that actually the time it takes to get a $30 client is the same as getting a $100 client. So what is your time worth? Because the client acquisition time is the same. And though lowering your prices doesn't mean that you get filled up faster.
Sasha Eburne started her business journey after discovering the world of virtual assistants. After finding an industry that provided the freedom she was looking for, her business went from one client in 24 hours to a full team in 6 months. Sasha now shares her experience with other service-based entrepreneurs, guiding them through mindset and systems challenges, helping them build an incredible business and life. If you're thinking about stepping into entrepreneurship by becoming a VA, or are looking for insights on the best ways to grow your service business, this episode is for you. Enjoy the show. Sasha, thank you so much for coming on. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here.
You're absolutely welcome. So let's just dive right in. Who is the right type of person to be a VA?
Well, I actually think most people are. And generally, we all have a lot of skills that we have or have gathered over time. And what I find, it's really more about the desire of what they want out of their lives. So a lot of women come to me, they're sick of going back to the office. They really want to spend more time at home with their family and friends, or even just to have the freedom to actually work whenever they choose or work from wherever they choose as well. So I really feel like the VA business model is really suitable for most people because they can use many of the skills that they've already learned and just map it across to supporting businesses around the globe.
Makes perfect sense. So somebody that desires more flexibility in their life, more freedom, let's say, but still the possibility, like I said in the intro, to earn a really good income.
Correct.
Excellent. And just a little bit of background about yourself. I mean, nobody comes out of the womb like, I want to be a VA, right? So what was your life like? What were you doing before the VA world found you or you discovered it?
Yeah, definitely. So I discovered it by accident, and I had spent 25 years in hospitality and hotels and predominantly in events, and worked in a couple of countries. I'm mainly down the east coast of Australia. And then the global pandemic happened. And over here in Australia, our hotels became quarantine. And we were actually, the hotel that I worked in was the very first hotel that entered the quarantine program. So we were all stood down. I had a 8-month-old at the time and literally out of work. So very much I was in and out of different jobs for the next year. And I was always a entrepreneur at heart. I'd kind of always tried a lot of different business models, never really stuck, or did I, maybe I didn't really put enough effort in. I always felt like I was an entrepreneur in an employee's body. And one of the many businesses that I tried during COVID was, I don't think you have it over there, but it's called The Body Shop. And it's, they had an online version, and it's very much things for facials and home stuff and makeup and bath stuff. And they had a networking opportunity where they actually were online. And it was quite a mainstream brand. It wasn't sort of those network marketing companies that nobody had ever heard of. Everybody in Australia had grown up with the brand. So I tried that. I was doing online parties from home. And an old colleague, she worked in a different hotel, bought some. And I went and met her outside of a cafe. We had coffee so I could give her delivery. We weren't allowed to dine inside the cafe. It was when we had to have coffees outside of the cafe. And I said to her, what are you doing now? She said, I'm a virtual assistant and I earn more in 3 days than I did in my 5-day job in the hotel. And being the entrepreneur at heart that I was just like, okay, sign me up. What do I need to do? And all she actually did was add me to all the Facebook groups where there were some opportunities. And I didn't do anything for 6 months. I just watched the space. And in hindsight, I should have jumped quicker. And one of the many jobs I had in that 1 year after COVID, well, just COVID, I decided to go into real estate, and I was an EA to the director there, and I was there for 4 months, and it just didn't light me up. So one day I noticed that there was quite a few leads that I could have responded to, created my website overnight. I was lucky I learned how to create websites when I was about 14, 15. And within 24 hours, I had my first client.
Wow. That's impressive.
So it literally just snowballed after there. I realized that there was all these other opportunities. I kept on going out for bathroom breaks whilst I was supposed to be working, and I was having pitch meetings left, right, and center. And then something just dropped, and I was just like, what if I had more time to do? Well, I didn't know what it was called then, but it's lead generation. And so my first client was 12 hours. So I did the 12 hours whilst doing my 38 hours. And then within a week of doing that, I just went into my boss. I said, I'm out. I wasn't having fun anyway. And then within 24 hours of resigning from my full-time job, I'd gotten another client. And then within 3 weeks, I was fully booked.
That's incredible. So with your 6 months of watching that space, did you start to get an idea about like really what this job would entail? And you're like, I could do that.
Not as much as you would have thought. It was more just seeing what people were asking for. And then, yes, it was just like, well, actually, I've done it before, or I could do that. It wasn't really, I didn't really have an understanding of how to actually run a business. It was more what the clients were looking for.
Okay. Very good. So you've been in this for how many years now? You've been doing this?
3.5 since I started.
3.5 years of experience, grown your own business to 30K months, which is just incredible growth for 3.5 years. So Sasha, what do you want somebody that's watching and listening to this, what do you want them to have or understand by the end of this interview?
Really, that if I can learn how to run a business, then anybody else can as well. I had come from a traditional 9 to 5. I'd been in the same industry for a long time. There's nothing special or different about what I did other than just learning. And I used my existing skills. I didn't have to go out there and do a booking certificate or an administration certificate. I just used the skills that I already had to offer them to clients. And a lot of people say, well, I don't have virtual assistant experience. It's just like, well, neither did I. And I had only been actually an assistant to a director for 4 months. However, I didn't really anything in that particular role that I use in my business now. It was all really about mapping across all of the skills that I had developed in the roles that I had in roles to be able to map it across into this space. So you don't have to have been in administration. You don't have to have been an assistant. Generally speaking, you can manage your life and your day-to-day and use a computer. You could offer those services to clients.
So let's touch a little bit on the mapping in of skills, because that's a very excellent point to help somebody see that essentially they're a lot more valuable than they think they are and know a lot more than they think they do. So what are some of these skill sets or things you were at least familiar with that you could map across when you're talking about that?
Yeah, correct. So I started off with diary management. So I had managed my own diary for many years, going from sales appointments left, right, and center, obviously personal calendar as well. So life administration is a big one, especially for business owners and entrepreneurs like ourselves. We're quite busy, and sometimes our personal lives get forgotten about and managing all of those household things. So life admin is a great skill to have and to offer to busy entrepreneurs. And even email management, I could very much navigate through an inbox to kind of prioritize this for a business owner. So I did start off with, let's say, the basics, and then realized I had a lot more skills. I could work in Canva and create graphics for clients. I could support them in their social media without knowing too much of social media, because I was just literally posting. I didn't have to know any of the strategy. I had a little bit of sales experience on the telephone, but I didn't want to do that, so I didn't do it anymore. But even just putting together of documents and just organizing their business. So that was kind of where I started, and it grew from there. I was just like, I really channeled the demand that was out there because I focused a lot of my energy in Facebook groups. And still to this day, 85% of our leads come from Facebook groups. Is if I could see a client wanting something, it would be more, I could do that, rather than trying to come up with all of these services to offer that I didn't really know that I had. Really about, well, what do actually people need? And I kind of tailored my business towards that.
I think that's a really smart way to do it. That way you're not front loading a bunch of skills and things that you think people might need versus going out and just seeing, oh, they need somebody to organize their calendar. Oh, they need somebody to help them post on social, or, they need to know which emails to respond to first. Well, I know how to put things in a calendar. I know how to read an email and flag it if necessary. I can do this. That's pretty impressive.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And, one of the things you talk about and help people with is stepping into their CEO mindset. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what does that mean, CEO mindset?
Yeah, it's a big thing. And I find that a lot of times when my clients, predominantly they're women, I have a few men now, but predominantly women come over into this space, is they don't know that they need to make the switch from being an employee to a CEO. And that really leads to even how they conduct themselves on a sales call, because they're just allowing the client to take ownership of that call, them asking the question. And when it comes time to actually share their rates and their prices, there's just no strategy in how that lands for their client. So it really starts with setting the tone from the word go to be like, this is a business to business relationship, and it's a collaboration rather than being treated like an employee. And I find that when they start this off on their own, they very much, it goes into that kind of relationship. And then they end up being like, well, I don't like this, and I'm getting a lower rate, and why don't I just go back to the 9 to 5? And there's a lot of self-doubt that comes in play with that. And that then feeds into a money conversation where they're very much still in the employee mindset. They're actually not charging enough for their services, and they forget that actually they need to pay money to run a business. And really, we need to make sure that the business is profitable, rather than just working for this low rate thinking that we're running a business to then turn out actually it's not worth it. And really the entire point of running a business is, sorry.
No. The entire point of running a business is what? Go ahead.
I guess is for it to be profitable, right? Excuse me. Is for it to actually be profitable. So if we're not profitable, what's the point of running a business?
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And then going back into the mindset side of things, when we're thinking about running our own business, we're thinking about us being the person, the CEO, right? You're right. That's a total mindset shift. And in my experience, when it comes to sales or B2B conversations, what you really want to do is frame the conversation right at the start. How would you help someone that's kind of skittish about being that CEO? How would you help them frame the starting of that conversation so they can more easily and more confidently step forward and start that B2B conversation?
It's a great question, because a pre-frame is one of the number one strategies that I teach in a discovery call. And what's interesting about the pre-frame at the beginning of the call is sometimes there's actually only a split second. And if you miss that opportunity to use your pre-frame, you lost it. And then the client takes ownership of that call. So the pre-frame that I like to use is, so I like to stick to a bit of a framework for these calls, just so we can get the best use of your time and my time to make sure that I can certainly support you in your business and to kick some goals in your business. Are you okay if we go ahead and get started? Then we get a yes from them, as well as I sometimes like to throw in, if we get off track and we go off on a tangent, do you mind if I pull us back in, because your time as a business owner is as busy as my time. So we want to make sure that the time is more worthwhile, more valuable or worthwhile. So certainly something along those lines. But I do actually give a script to my clients and then allow them the fact to kind of adopt that into their own voice, so they feel comfortable showing confidence.
Right. Perfect. And I think you're absolutely right, because a lot of a lot of CEOs of other businesses, executives, what have you, they're alpha people. Like they're used to, like, this is what I want, this is what I'm thinking, and just boom. So you're right. If you can get ahead of them right at the jump and start that pre-framing, I think that's great. And I really love how you asked within that pre-frame a couple questions. Like, is it okay if I do this? If we start going down these rabbit holes, is it all right if I pull us back because I want to respect your time as well as mine? That puts you right on a more of a level playing field, which is just beautiful.
Yeah, and that's the goal, level playing field.
Yep, 100%. So again, guys, if you're a little bit skittish about doing this and thinking, how am I going to talk to these people? Just rewind this for like 2 or 3 minutes and watch that section again, because we just gave you the pre-frame that you can use and adapt and make your own. Okay, so let's go on to, we know that we want to do this. We now have the pre-frame to start the conversation, but there's a lot of noise out there when it comes to marketing and getting clients. So you were able to snag an incredible amount of appointments and clients right out of the gate. Now, is that still possible in this day and age? And how do you help people cut through all that marketing noise that is out there?
It's a great question. And I probably have only seen a little bit of a shift in those strategies now, and those strategies have really served us for about 3 to 4 years. So the answer is yes, still very much. I still believe that you can get a full calendar worth of clients, and some of my clients are doing that. And what it actually is down to, there's 2 things, the 2 main things. The first one is mindset, because what I hear from a lot of clients is if they see it on a Facebook group, but there's maybe 30 or 40 comments, they feel like they don't have a place to go and comment. And that's really a mindset thing, because actually they have every right to be there. They have every right to place their details on it. And when I say their details, there's also a strategy with how to respond to make sure you stand out from everybody else, as well as getting potential recommendations from colleagues in the business. So networking to make sure that you're getting recommendations. One thing that we have added into the strategy, because it is getting bigger and more competitive out there, is the next step. What is the next step to just responding to a lead? Where else can you connect with that client? Where else can you stand out from the crowd? Can you go and send them a voice note on Instagram, or can you go and connect with them on LinkedIn and make a personal connection to stand out from 30 or 40 people? And though also recognizing there's probably 80% of people that don't know how to respond to those Facebook groups strategically. So actually it dilutes the amount of people that can actually stand out. So there's a lot of people that are still writing, I'm interested, or asking questions to the lead, and not knowing that that client's actually not going to sit there and respond to all the questions. They actually just want, in the moment, who can help me, rather than having conversations with all of the people that respond in those Facebook groups. So yeah, very much about how can you do it strategically, as well as the mindset of knowing that you have every right to show up there, and your business could actually be the one that is the right business for that client.
Okay. So let's say, because I love Facebook organic marketing and kind of finding unique ways to connect. So let's go into that a little bit. Say you've got a business owner, an entrepreneur that they want, like we were talking about earlier, they want to have somebody manage their calendar. They want a little help on social media, and they want to know which emails to respond to first, right? So they create a post in a Facebook group saying as much. Do you recommend answering that question or that ad, however you want to look at it? Do you recommend answering that and then listing, I can do this. I've been doing it for such and such years, or I've been doing it for so many people. Do you recommend doing that kind of authority build in that comment space and breaking it down like that?
Absolutely. It's about sharing your credibility and showing up in your zone of genius. So what I like to say is a response to the ad, advising your credibility, your tenure. So if you're an administration expert for 20 years, then 100% you need to put it there, and you need to show credibility, because you need to stand out from everybody else. you acknowledge what they're asking for. And sometimes I also suggest maybe using some of their words that they have used. And one thing that I found that doesn't work is going and listing all of your other services, because they want that. They don't need to know that you do everything else, because we don't want you to be a jack of all trades. We want you to be the expert. And then the technique that I always teach is one call to action, because if you give them 3 or 4 call to actions, they're like, well, what do I do? So we need to tell clients exactly what we want to do. So credibility, respond directly to the ad, and one call to action.
I love that. And it goes right back to where we started, in preparing to be a VA, to not over prepare, learn skills, a bunch of skills you don't have just in case. Same thing when you're responding to the ad. Don't shotgun blast your entire portfolio of what you can do. Tell them that you can do what they asked for, which is it seems so simple, but I'm sure you've seen plenty of VAs in the past that'll do that, right?
Correct. Very much so.
Yep. It's very easy for somebody to like, I have all these skills and they need to know. And no, they don't. Not at the first. So when you were talking about call to action, like one call to action, of course, that's good. As simple as you can keep it, the better. My curiosity is that call to action sending them a friend request, so that way you can talk to them one-on-one through Messenger to book the meeting?
So this is an interesting strategy, and I've actually listened to your podcast episode about that. And I think that it could be a thing here in Australia. In Australia, a lot of people use Facebook personally. So very much a lot of my clients, when I have talked to that strategy, they steer away from it. So they very much, here in Australia, it's seen very much as though they're intruding. And yes, it could be mindset. But there's a lot of people that don't want friend requests here, and they don't want the DMs. And they actually are now putting it in the Facebook ad saying, don't request me and do not DM me. And yeah, so it's very much becoming not a thing here. And a lot of them want us to respect their boundaries in terms of that. But what I see is in Australia, we very much use Facebook personally, whereas I know from what I know, I've got some friends and family in America, it's not as well used for personal Facebook, putting up photos of your families like that. However, my clients who are coaches, it's a very different strategy, and it's very much about connecting with 10 to 20 people that could potential clients. So that strategy seems to work in the coaching space when coaches teach coaches, or when coaches are going. In terms of VA in the very corporate and the business, it's not a strategy that a lot of people like to adopt here.
Interesting. So it's something that is working in the States. I know, because I've gone through training as Facebook organic marketing. I've done it myself. So it does work. So that's one way. That's one way you could do a quote unquote call to action. But take us through how you set it up in Australia. And I'm sure we could probably utilize that or some version of it here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the strategy of the friend requesting, that's something I find for me is working in my coaching space, dealing in the VA space. I think it's just a mindset people choose not to. So what I find is the best call to action is, let's book a call and jump on and discuss your needs and requirements to see how we can serve you better. And rather than just putting a Calendly link or a TidyCal link, is actually just embedding that call or the code into our website. So they're actually landing a website. So we get essentially more organic traffic to our website, as well as once they book that call, they're actually on our website, free and able to move across the platform. Now, if the client doesn't say, do not DM me and do not friend request me, it is still kind of acceptable to DM them and actually create that direct conversation. And though a lot of times it ends up in the spam request, so depending on if they check that. However, I do teach a DM framework to support them by actually guiding that client through that DM conversation to then essentially jump on and book a call, rather than very much kind of what you said, don't just drop into their DMs and try and sell the list of what they've got, or go straight in, let's jump on a call. Very much guiding them through and really ascertaining their goals and their dreams and desires. Well, actually, I can help you with that. How about we just jump on a call and see how this can work together for us? So very much similar into that, but that would very much work in VA space for sure.
Excellent. So we now have a little bit of best practices, and I want to kind of have a little bit of fun with that, because back when I said the shotgun blast method, you smiled and said you've seen that. So I want to go a little bit deeper. Like, what else have you seen as far as VAs trying to start their business, grow it, get clients, whatever, that's just like shake your head terrible? And then what do you do? How do you do it right?
Okay. So, and like the cold DMing is very much seen here as spammy. And that is a, hey there, here's what I can offer you, because they haven't questioned whether they actually have the need. So you're essentially trying to sell to somebody that might not have the need. So you need to identify if there's a need. Otherwise, I feel like cold DMing is a complete waste of time, because you're trying to go and create the demand rather than channeling the demand. The other one that I see all the time, and it's not that bad here, it comes a lot from the countries, there's a big VA culture in Kenya and Nairobi and even in India, is they're just DMing and saying, I'm going to work for you for free to prove what I can do. So on that, especially when we talk about mindset, I teach to sell at premium rates and sell at the top of the market. And that's very much what I did. So I actually turn around to say, I'm sorry, that doesn't actually work. I actually respond to them. I'm like, sorry, working for free doesn't align with my values, because it definitely doesn't. And then in Australia, I see a lot of VAs when they first start saying, I'm offering my prices really low to get testimonials or to even get clients. And I very much try and get them to change the narrative on that actually the time it takes to get a $30 client is the same as getting a $100 client. So what is your time worth? Because the client acquisition time is the same. And though lowering your prices doesn't mean that you get filled up faster, that you get more clients quicker. It's not proven. And the thing is, if you get filled up at the low paying clients, then you're stuck and you can't actually grow. And experience low paying clients, low paying problems.
Man, you are so right about that. That is something that is definitely talked about a lot in the coaching industry. Being able to charge your worth, all that conversation. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's just lay it out. How much should a VA be charging for their work when they're just getting started?
So, and this is the thing. I don't also believe that we should be charging low when we get started, because at the beginning, remember I said, we all actually have these skills already. So we might come from 20 years administration experience. So don't disregard that. So we're all actually new as a VA when we started a VA business, let's be honest. And though we could also have 20 years experience. So I actually suggest, especially when we're talking about both markets, is finding out where everybody's sitting. Going back to a bit of a traditional, let's say, cost analysis or competitor analysis to see where the market is sitting, to see where you want to position yourself rather than your expertise. Because the problem with your expertise is most people think that they're not as good as somebody else. And that is a mindset thing. So I really teach them to be like, okay, well, the market says they range from here to here. Although in Australia, it's like here. That's the difference in the rates, because people don't value their time, which is why I love the work that I do, because I get to bring people up here to value their services and skills. So I say at least go toward the higher spot, value themselves, know that they're good enough, that they can do. They generally, if you ask them, they can do the work. They know how to do the work. And that's the thing. So as long as they can do the work and get results, then they should be charging up here. So changing that narrative to make them know that they can do it. And then be confident enough and give them the strategy that they can show up and sell their services. So I know that in the US, for somebody that's got experience, I think when we were talking about rates, it's between about 50 and 70 US dollars per hour. And then in Australia, we talk about that $85 to $120 per hour. In saying that, no, I do know some very small virtual assistants in the US that are charging at least $100 per hour.
And I think that would be just more about who you're targeting to work with. Would you agree with that? Correct.
Definitely. And if they have desires to work at the higher market, is actually identify, well, who is their ideal client that could be in that space as well, because we only need to work with this many people. We don't with this many people.
Right. Okay. So now we're talking about all this and helping people out with their tasks. And it's got my mind thinking, how many clients does one person have the bandwidth to help as a VA?
So it really depends upon how many hours per client. And that's just going to determine what comes in terms of leads or what you go out there and source. So you could essentially work with one client and work full-time hours, depending upon if the demand is there. Most people choose to work with a couple because of the diversity of it. I mean, most of us left our 9 to 5 because we're bored. So having one particular client, they might feel very much like their employee, and that client might have a monopoly on their time. So most people choose to work with a couple clients at 5 to 10 hours. And again, that's going to depend upon the hours that they choose to work. So if they're a mum and they have to work school hours, their hours are going to be a lot less, as well as you still need time to run a business. So some clients could have you for 5, some could have you for 10, some could have you for 15. So in terms of the number, it's really going to be individual specific. However, you could very much have quite a comfortable income on about 20 hours if they choose. So even if they were to choose to work 38 hours, which is the normal working week, it would be very difficult to still find time to actually run your business, because that still takes time as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So typically the best time to find clients is when you don't need clients, right? So do you recommend people still advertise, or still, like, I say advertise, but we're not really advertising. We're going into Facebook groups, we're connecting on social, we're getting referrals from other clients that we have already. But should we still be pushing that even though we don't have the space to take on another person right now?
So I still believe yes, because if we're not, and if we're not showing up telling people that we're here, we could be potentially missing out on some really great opportunities. And it kind of looks like you're closed, let's say. So your virtual shopfront is closed. Whereas I always think that actually there could be a dream client around the corner. So this is kind of you still jumping on discovery calls, still having conversations with people, and you might be having, a little bit of thought in the back of your mind, hey, Mr. Smith down there, you might just want to, get rid of him as a client and bring on somebody else that's maybe more aligned with your values, or the work is all, you can demand a higher rate. Or you might actually be at the spot where you're like, well, actually, I could just actually hire a subcontractor to come in and help me. And one of the other clients could be passed on to them, and I could sit here and take this dream client over here. So there's lots of different ways that we can pivot and change business. And I think that still being able to see what is out there, you might just find the best client that you weren't looking for by staying relevant and showing up in those spaces.
Yep. Perfect. I'm really glad you explained all that, because yes, there's definitely still opportunity out there for growth, for better clients, all of that. So great stuff. And, speaking about hiring another employee or subcontractor, however you want to phrase it, that to me is one of the ways you could help avoid burning out in this business. So talk to us a little bit about that and what that looks like for a VA and how they can help avoid that.
Yeah, so really what I found in my journey was you can't really grow a business by doing it all, because yes, there are problems like burning out or actually just doing things that half the capacity that you would normally do it. So you'd be showing up to your clients in 50% capacity, whereas you really want to be showing up in 100 or at least 110. And so if you're cutting yourself thin, you're not going to be giving it your all. So in terms of hiring, there's lots of different ways that we can hire. And I find that the fear that holds them back is they're like, oh, I don't want to let them loose on a client. And there's lots of different ways that you can hire. They don't have to be client facing, although I chose my team to be client facing because then that would really buy back my time. And the other way is to have them actually support you and do some tasks to then share with the client. So just say you had a big task, they could help you cut down those hours, and then you give it to the client. You would be the only person that would be client facing. So that's a few different things. And one task that's been really successful and really prominent is having support in is actually your lead generation, because if they did 15 minutes of lead generation every day, that would actually support new clients and shifting forward. So it's really all about, what else could they do to make them worthwhile? Because a lot of people bring them in and they're like, oh, I could have just done that myself. And really there's lots of different ways to make it worthwhile having them on. Now, if they're client facing, they actually pay for themselves, because just say the client is paying $100 an hour, you're paying the subcontractor for an hour, the team member is doing all the work, you're still making $50 profit, and you may have only needed to acquire that client, onboard the client, and then they're actually direct profit.
Yep. Love it. Love it. See, guys, Sasha knows what she's talking about. She's done this before. So if you think you need her services in order to, well, you do. If you think you're going to start a VA business, I would just recommend going to her website and just getting on there. And, this is a good point as any to kind of get that out. So where can people go and find you and say, man, Sasha she's it. She's the one. Let's go. Where can we find you?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so they can go to my website, which is www.sashaeburne.com. I'm sure that you'll link it in the show so they can spell that one out. And if you're just up for a chat or you want to find a little bit more about becoming a virtual assistant, just Sasha Eburne __ on Instagram. I'm always up for a chat. We can always have a voice note conversation, which is definitely my preferred way of having conversations. It's a lot more personal, and we can certainly see what would be suitable for you.
Perfect. And yes, guys, those links are going to be below. So go check out the site, follow her on Instagram and make that connection, because that's what this business is all about. Well, that's what business in general is all about, is connection. And so we've got that. They know where to find you now, which is perfect. And now I want to ask about the amazing wave that we are riding right now in technology, which is AI. What is AI doing, and what is it going to do in the virtual assistant space?
Oh, that's a loaded question, because I feel like it just gets bigger and better every single day. And I think if we're not leveraging AI, then we're going to be left in the past. So I think it's really important to stay up to date with AI, to use AI in a daily practice. And it's really allows you, one, to be able to work in clients' business where they potentially use AI, because even though AI is great, we still need humans to input the data. And then in our own business, so, in terms of creating content, yes, you use your own words, and I always recommend that everybody train their AI to be like them, is to be leveraging it to save so much time. So if they are trying to put out a new offer or a package or a new service, the thing is, we're not born trained copywriters. And I always like to preface that, because I feel like when ChatGPT came out, a lot of people were like, no, it's going to replace jobs. We've got to stay away from it. But as business owners, we're not trained financial controllers, and we're not trained copywriters, and we're not trained graphic designers. So by utilizing ChatGPT or different AIs, we can actually just move forward so much faster in their business and actually save a lot more money. So yes, there are still some times that I will hire a trained copywriter, and really that's to get let's say the top level stuff, the voice, all of that. But once you've got all of that, you can just really utilize the AI and leverage that. And the amount of content that I can produce in one day is next level. So if we have knowledge of that, we can do it in our business plus our client's business, as well as using it as well.
Yep, perfect point. Again, we go right back to relying on our skill set. If we know how to use AI, we know how to do certain things. We can do that not only for our business, but we can do that for the client as well. 100%. So you don't think that AI is eventually going to replace a virtual assistant then?
No, I actually don't. I think that's apparent for all jobs. I think when, say, Canva came out, a lot of graphic designers felt that they were going to be taken over. When ChatGPT came out, they thought that it was going to take over copywriters. There is still the need for those trained experts and humans in those positions. And I think the thing with business owners is a lot of times when they do leverage, say, AI to maybe do their organizational skills, it doesn't replace the fact that they could just actually have a personal conversation, send a voice note, and just get it done in terms of quick, speedy, but also the initiative. And that's where the human brain comes into play. Is AI doesn't have the initiative to take in all the different facets of everything. And I think that's why it's so important. And that's why people they want that human connection, because there's more than enough data in our brains to be like, okay, well, that's not going to work, so I'm going to do something else. Whereas I still don't feel that the AI will potentially get to where it replaces the human brain.
Mm. And that makes another really great selling point, actually, when you're on the phone with that potential client and they ask you the question, why would I hire you versus just having a bunch of AI tools that do this stuff for me? And you could just answer them with basically what you just said, which is, well, instead of you having to tell the AI and type everything in and make sure that it does it right the way you want it, instead of doing that, you could just send me a voice note. And because we have a relationship, I know you, I know what you want. I can just take that voice note, which takes you 5 seconds, and get it done.
Correct. Absolutely. You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very powerful stuff. So I'm glad that kicked off in my brain based on what you said, and we could lay that out there for people. Well, Sasha, this has been just an incredible conversation filled with so many tips, so much value and experience, and we can't thank you enough for it. But now we're just going to completely get away from entrepreneurship altogether, and we're just going to have some fun and kind of get to know you a little bit. So I love this question because the answers are always so different. Sasha, what is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, that's a hard one. I was going to say chocolate, but I've changed very much my lifestyle, and that's not a thing for me anymore. I guess my guilty pleasure is like some massages. That
Oh,
is like, if I could do one thing every single day, that's what it would be.
yep. I totally get that. I spent the previous 10 years of my career as a massage therapist, so respect.
Yeah, totally.
Excellent. Excellent. And then what is the food that if it were ever to be put on your plate, you would never eat it?
Brussels sprouts.
All right. All right. We got a veggie hater here. All right. I see you.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. And last one, dear, bucket list travel site that you have not yet been to.
The Northern Lights.
Northern Light. Yep. Me too. Me too. Although it's weird, like we've been starting to see them in the US now, not where I am, unfortunately, but some people have been able to see them, which is nuts.
Yeah, actually, we've had people down south of Australia seeing the Southern Lights,
Hmm.
like down near like Hobart and Victoria, like very far down. There's pictures of them, and I didn't even know there was a Southern Lights.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's news to me, but it's incredible. Have you seen
Yeah.
those huts? Have you seen the huts that they have that are basically like just you're outside and the roof is all glass and you can just lay in your bed at night in your
Oh,
hotel and like look at the lights?
yeah, I've seen it, like the outdoor igloo type of things.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Definitely getting one of those when I go to see those lights, for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, Sasha, thank you for playing our little game here. And again, it was a real pleasure having you on. You dropped so much value, and we all appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so great to be here.
Absolutely. All right, guys, you know what to do. Share this video, like it. Make sure to share it out with your network. You never know whose life you can positively impact with just a simple share. They might be thinking about being a VA, and Sasha's support could be integral to their success. So like, share, subscribe if you're not already, and peace. We'll see you in the next one.